So guys, welcome back to another episode. I'm Brody Jacobson, joined alongside by Gustav Reese, and we're one day from March.
Yes, we are. I'm very excited.
So we're going to be talking about recapping the last few weeks. We've been a little inactive here, but we're going to catch ourselves up, and we're going to talk about some of the bracketologies we've been looking at and what we see from some of these teams as we make our way to the best month in sports.
Yes. And, I mean, how can you guys not be excited? 2 days away from the first conference tournament game, 2 weeks away from March Madness. Just what a great time of the year. The weather's getting warmer. It's just a fun time right now here as we're approaching March, getting out of these cold months.
Yeah, and speaking of the first conference tournament game, that would have to be the Atlantic Sun. And we knew their tournament was expanding to this big, 7-round tournament that really shows the importance of the regular season. But again, is this too long, you think, of a tournament?
Any tournament that has 7 rounds, I think, is a bit too long considering I'm pretty sure March Madness only has 6 rounds. So if you're going to go more than that, that's kind of crazy considering that's the whole country. I don't mind the idea, though, of giving the top seeds of the regular season a bigger advantage. I kind of like it, actually. But 7 rounds is way too much. I think maybe the top 4 seeds get double buys, or top 2
seeds get quadruple buys.
Top 2 seeds get double or triple buys. But anything that's more than 3 buys is just crazy to me. That just doesn't really make sense. You shouldn't automatically give them the semifinals. I think you got to start them in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the tournament starts Sunday and they play maybe not that Monday, but they play every day after that. And the top 2 seeds don't play till Friday?
I'm pretty sure it goes Sunday and Monday of next week, and then they skip a couple days, and then it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday to finish it off or something.
And speaking of those conference tournaments, I guess we'll jump straight into mid-majors. And when we're talking about mid-majors, what has been a mid-major that's really stood out to you in these last few months?
Okay, so I would say UC San Diego, and many people think that UC Irvine's better than them. I know they've won the tournament in the past, and maybe that's why people think that. But there's really no reason why, because the most recent time they played, UC San Diego beat them by 20. They haven't lost in forever. They're top 40 in the net and KenPom right now. UC Irvine isn't really anywhere close to that. They have a better record. They have better wins. They have a quad 1 win. So it just doesn't really make any sense that people think UC Irvine's better. I think both of the teams are good, but I think UC San Diego has a great chance to maybe get an upset in March. And maybe another team, Drake, the 2 Power 5 teams they've played, they won. I'm not as high on them as San Diego. And then one sleeper under the radar team, Arkansas State, has had a sleep a very good year. And a thing that matters a lot in March Madness, you can't turn the ball over and you have to make threes, and they're good at both of those. So watch out if you're a 4 seed and you're playing Arkansas State in the first round. And then of course maybe you throw in Yale because they beat Auburn last year, and they're great again this year. They have Polikinas back and Mbang.
Yeah, you talk about UC San Diego, and they split the series with UC Irvine. But again, these teams have to control their business, control the controllable, just to make the championship, where they look to see 2 heavyweights. And this reminds me of when we've seen Drake against Indiana State these last 2 years. And I was watching the Space today with Seth Davis and T3 Bracketology about expanding the NCAA tournament. And they think that these teams really shouldn't be punished. Again, these 2 teams have more road wins than every team in the country besides Auburn. It's not their fault they weren't able to schedule these high blue blood teams. They tried to, but again, these Power 4 teams, there's a problem right now in college basketball where they don't want to schedule these mid-majors because they're not incentivized to.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm seeing. I think that showdown in the Big West, if we see it, is definitely going to be a game to watch.
Yeah, I agree. It should be a great finish, and it does remind me a lot of the Missouri Valley last year. And I do think that we're going to get it again this year. Obviously, Drake, 26-3, great record. But Bradley, they've been good for the past 5 years now, and they did beat Drake in their last meeting at Drake. So do not sleep on them. They're a great team as well. And I think we could be that could definitely be a bid stealer if Drake does make the tournament. So people will have to watch out for that conference for sure.
Yeah, and you're talking about that conference. What people are saying right now, what I've heard, is if Drake finishes out the regular season, I think they only have 1 more game, they win that, and then you don't lose. They're saying only a quad 4 game. I think you should just be safe by not losing quad 3 game because they're in safe 9 seed, 10 seed area right now. If they don't lose that in Arch Madness, they're a lock. And then you're talking about, okay, they lose in the semifinals. Yeah, a team like Bradley, Northern Iowa could be in the tournament.
Yeah. And like this goes to show in like many conferences. Last year, I'm pretty sure we had 5 bid stealers, and we really left a lot of good teams out of the tournament last year. I'll tell you right now, St. John's could have easily made like an Elite Eight or Final Four run. They finished the year top 20 in KenPom. They won 11 out of the last 12 games, with their only loss being to UConn by 3, and they were the national champion. They got left out. Indiana State, great team last year. They got left out. Seton Hall, they also beat UConn. They got left out. It was just, and even go to the ACC, teams like Pitt and Wake Forest, who I think those teams would have, from last year, would have easily made it this year. They both got left out. There was many teams. Oklahoma started off the year. They were in like the top 8 at one point. They got left out. It was crazy with all like Oregon. Oregon was a bid stealer. NC State. There were so many of them last year. This year, I don't think we're going to get as many, and the bubble's weaker. So we could have a lot of maybe not so good teams sneak into the tournament and maybe get like an obliterated by a pretty good 60, like in Arizona maybe or something like that.
Yeah, so when you're looking at the bid stealers right now, I think you can really make a great argument for 2 conferences, and those are the mid-major conferences. The American, Memphis is a lock, but there's a good chance Memphis doesn't win the conference tournament. In that case, whoever wins that, that's one bid thief. Then Arch Madness, Drake doesn't win, that's another big thief. There's always the possibility, like we saw last year in these power conferences, for one team to just make a run. Like if a bubble team, since the bubble is so weak this year, if they make the championship in any of these Power 4 conferences, they're in.
Yeah. And like another conference that Brody didn't touch on, it's practically bid stealer university at this point. The Atlantic 10, they do this every year. It's not like besides that one year Dayton was like insane, they never really have a top 25 caliber team, but they always have a lot of decent teams that maybe around the bubble you have a couple that would be in the tournament. But if they lose, because there's a lot of good teams in the A10, if they lose, we could find a bid stealer in that conference. Or maybe even the West Coast Conference this year, considering Gonzaga is way weaker than normal. St. Mary's is good, but they're definitely upset prone. They play close games all the time. And we have 2 great teams in Santa Clara and San Francisco this year that could possibly do it and get a bid stealer in that conference. And then you always have the capability of having one in a Power 5 conference. We had 2 last year, which is insane, NC State and Oregon. The ACC isn't that great this year. Big East isn't that great, so you never know.
So when you talk about bid stealers, I was just kind of thinking about this, but San Francisco plays Gonzaga on Saturday. And if San Francisco wins, I think they're in the tournament, in my opinion. So would you classify that as a bid thief?
I mean, yeah, it's definitely a bid thief, but like people wouldn't really think, when people think of bid thieves, they think of conference tournament, winning that to get them in. It's not really a bid thief though, actually, when you really think about it, because it's kind of just a bubble team getting a win to put them in the tournament, just like any other bubble team. It just happens to not be a power major conference. So no, it's actually not a bid thief.
So let's move it over. So we're going to preview a few games, then we'll flip-flop back to March Madness. And I guess we'll start it off with Kentucky-Auburn. That's the first one that comes to my mind.
Yeah, so Kentucky-Auburn is a great game. And Kentucky, yeah, they've lost a couple of games, but they're still a good team, and they've had injuries. And we know they can get big wins. They've done it all season long. But Auburn, on the other hand, they're just going crazy right now. Number 1 team in the country, deservingly so, for like 14 quadruple wins. It's insane. But it is at Kentucky, and Auburn hasn't won at Kentucky in forever. So Kentucky definitely is going to come into this like, oh, we can easily win this game against the number 1 team. If they have Lamont Butler back, I think they can easily pull off the upset. I don't know if I'd pick them to, but like it could be a close one. If anything, I'm actually going to pick Kentucky to pull off the upset because of like the past history, and I know they can get hot and they can beat anyone in the country if they do.
Yeah, we haven't won in Rupp Arena since 1988. I think we're 53-2 in Rupp Arena. This game is on ABC because it used to be on CBS when SEC games were occasionally on there. So this game has the storied history between these 2 teams. But then again, Kentucky's got a lot of star power. I'm worried for this game against Auburn. It doesn't really hurt us, but we have Texas A&M and Alabama coming up after this. So this would be a big win to add to the resume.
Yeah, so in our next game, we have a great matchup between Kansas and Texas Tech. And many people would have thought these two teams might be in different positions or rankings heading into this game. Kansas preseason number 1, Texas Tech, they fell under the radar in the offseason, but they are a great team, that's for sure. And we're going to have a battle this week. And I'm pretty sure it's in Allen Fieldhouse as well. So this could be a great one. Kansas is probably favorite, but don't sleep on the Red Raiders. They can definitely get it done on the road.
I'm actually going to pick Kansas in this one. I feel like they're going to figure it out. People talk about, oh, Kansas was preseason number 1. Bill Self hasn't been lower than a 4 seed in, I think, 15, 20 years. That's dominance right there. Kansas has dominated seeding in the NCAA tournament. Sure, they might be having an off year, but again, there's a reason they're preseason number 1. They have the star power from 1 to 10. You get it figured out in a game like this against Texas Tech, and you could do really well in the dance.
Yeah, I'm going to pick Kansas as well. They've proven a couple of times this year that they can get it done against the best teams. They've done it against Duke. They obliterated Iowa State. They can easily do it. Obviously, they have the star power, like Brody just said. It's just, can they all put it together one night? And if you're a Kansas fan, the rest of the season doesn't matter. If you can start putting it together right now, that's all that really matters. And if they do, watch out, because Kansas could definitely be like a 5 seed that gets all the way to the finals.
Yeah, totally.
In our next game, we have another SEC matchup because there's so many good ones. It's 5 or 6, Alabama traveling to Knoxville, Tennessee. This should be a great game. What do you think here?
Yeah, right. Tennessee, they kind of want to slow you down. Alabama wants to speed you up. It's clashing styles. Nate Oates, he hasn't loved the way his team fought this year. The last time they really had one of these monumental games was against us, and he criticized his own players in Grant Nelson and Mark Sears. So we'll see how they respond in this one. Tennessee, yeah, they don't have the star power, but Rick Barnes has his team. They just defend so well. They do the intangibles. They score. And I feel like if they're able to slow down Alabama in this one, considering that at home, Tennessee can win it.
Yeah, and I feel like you know what you're getting with Tennessee every year. You're always going to get a pretty good defensive team that has like a shooter or two, like Connect last year, Lanier this year. They have good point guard control. They have big men. They might not be averaging the most points, but they'll hold their own down there. And if you go to Tennessee, yeah, you're in for a tough matchup. We haven't seen them they haven't been too successful in March. They haven't been bad. They're always like Sweet 16, Elite 8 type team. The question is, will they make that breakout run this year? I think this team could be the one to do it, but not tonight. Not tomorrow. I think Alabama is actually going to come in and win in Knoxville. Alabama's kind of been struggling a bit recently, but if they're making shots, they might be the best team in the country. But they shoot it from so far away, but they can make the shots. Chris Youngblood's been playing great recently. Mark Sears has not been playing well at all. If he can get it going, then they could be in trouble, Tennessee. And I can see Alabama winning. They just got so much depth and star power on their roster.
And about that game, I'm just curious what your thoughts are. How many points realistically do you think Alabama's going to score?
Okay, so Tennessee, they could have low-scoring games. We've seen it with them. But pretty much any time you play Alabama, no matter how St. Mary's could play Alabama, and I think the final score would be in the 80s. That's just how it works with them. They play so fast, it's impossible to keep this game low-scoring. Clemson, Alabama in the Elite Eight was like a 20, 25, 26 game last year. It ended up 89-82. It's just you can't slow down this team, really. So you kind of just have to go to their tempo and try to get them to turn the ball over a little bit. Tennessee could easily do that, but to answer your question, it's going to be high scoring for sure.
All right.
And we have a huge matchup in the Big East, Creighton versus Xavier. And college basketball casuals, it's just like a mid-game. But no, Creighton's actually been very good, even with the loss of Pop Isaacs, maybe the second best team in the Big East. They probably are. And Xavier, on the other hand, they're in the first 4 out for most people. Some people have them in, but they're definitely on the bubble, and they need a big win, and this is a great opportunity to get one.
Yeah, Creighton's pretty much eliminated from Big East contention. If St. John's wins again, they clinch it, and they've already clinched the co-title. So then again, Kalkbrenner, he was a little shaken up in the St. John's game, but he's back now, and he's healthy. And you talk about guys without Pop Isaacs, Jeremiah Neal. He's exactly who you want in a college basketball player. Some games, he only plays 15 minutes. The other ones, he'll play 40, and he'll get you great 40 minutes. But then again, Xavier, you always like to see these bubble teams that have a chance to get a win in the quad 1 or the quad 2 to make the tournament. And they have their closer, Ryan Conwell, Zach Fremantle. They're a great duo, and I think the Musketeers are going to get it done.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Xavier team's very slept on. They obviously have McKnight handling the ball. He's been doing it for years. He's a great player. Rylan Conwell, he can make anything. He just can. And then Zach Freemantle, an experienced veteran that can also get it done. So Xavier, they're going to be coming in this game on fire. They need a win. Kalkbrenner might be a bit shaken up. Ashworth at the same time. He's also a gamer though, so you can never count
He's a
on
gamer.
Creighton. And Jemiah Neal, like you said, he's been a beast recently. And yeah, so it should be a great game. I'm expecting a very close game. I wouldn't be surprised if Xavier won, but I wouldn't be surprised if Creighton won either. In our next game, we have Texas A&M versus Florida. Florida is pretty big favorites in this one, and I'm not even too surprised. Florida is so good this year. They have great guard play, maybe the best in the country, and their big men they get rebounds. They're good players as well. And Texas A&M, they've been falling down a little bit recently.
Yeah, so Florida, they've been dominant pretty much as of late, especially since that Auburn win. And I think Florida's going to keep rolling here. But the thing is, A&M always has that factor. Talk about Buzz Williams' offensive rebound philosophy. Yeah, their philosophy is you get athletes on the floor, they're going to get rebounds. They're leading the country in offensive rebounds once again, and I'm not surprised they are. A&M, if they got to fight physically with this Florida team because Florida's still a little banged up in the front court. And again, with 30 seconds left, 15 seconds left, if you need one guy to shoot a shot, I don't care if he's 0 for 20 on the game like he was against Houston in the tournament a few years ago. Is there any better guy than Wade Taylor in college basketball?
I mean, yeah, Wade Taylor, he's got that confidence, that's for sure. But yeah, I think Florida's going to win this game. But the one thing I do want to say, I feel like there's a lot of teams this year kind of like Texas A&M. So you got Texas A&M, the SEC, Michigan State in the Big Ten. Both teams can't shoot the three. They rely on rebounds. They're great. They're great, like in close games. They have great coaches and they have great defenses. And then another team, St. John's, can't shoot the three. Yeah, every rebound, great coach, great defense. And they're all around this like 7 to 12 range in the AP poll. And another team I wouldn't mind throwing in there, Iowa State. They usually have a great defense, great coach. They've been struggling shooting the three recently, so they're also in that category. And these four teams, it's going to be very interesting to me. Will they succeed in March or will they like falter? Because they could very easily get upset. We've seen it with Virginia and Purdue teams in the past. And in our last game that we're going to go over today, we have Arizona versus Iowa State. These two play pretty different offenses. Iowa State's been very banged up recently. I have no clue if we're going to see them at full health. But Arizona's been pretty good this year. What do you think?
Yeah, you're right. Iowa State banged up. We're not sure if Gilbert's gonna go. They've had to have other guys like Heidi step up. Not Heidi. Yeah, Heidi.
Yeah.
And Arizona, right? They always have Caleb Love, but how well is he gonna play? This Arizona team is very talented and experienced when it comes March. And is this one on? Yep, it's on the road in Ames. But I'm actually gonna roll with the Wildcats.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there. Iowa State's been falling down big time, and I'm very tempted to take the Wildcats, but I'm actually not. I've actually been somewhat impressed with Iowa State. Like, they haven't really had their play, especially in that Houston game. That Oklahoma State loss was bad. But in the Houston game, they played pretty darn well, in my opinion. They very well could have won that if LJ Cryer wasn't unconscious in that game. And I think Iowa State is still a good team, and if they get healthy, you can watch out for them in the tournament because I think they can definitely win you some games. But now we're going to just flip over to talking about some C lines and what we think. But, man, we're starting to already see shades of March. These last 2 days, Michigan State and then Michigan, back-to-back buzzer
What about
beaters.
the CSU Bakersfield buzzer beater?
Yeah, I
And
guess.
the Weber State one?
But, come on. Trey Holloman from full court pretty much, and then the guy on Michigan.
Burnett.
Yeah, to beat Rutgers. Heartbreaker for Rutgers. They just can't seem to get it done.
Okay, let's start in the Big Ten. You talk about Michigan State. They're projected to get 10 teams right now, but realistically, are any of the teams going to go to the Final Four?
I never really see it with this Big Ten conference. I never see a top. If I had to say, I mean, Purdue's got Braden Smith and Kaufman Wren, right? But they don't really have too many other good players. Wisconsin might be my pick right now just because they have
a gamer.
They have a guy who can get them buckets in late game situations, which they haven't had in the past year. So this Wisconsin team is different. They also score more points. And they have good role players around them too. But another team, I wouldn't even be surprised, even though they're winning a lot of close games. Michigan State, obviously. Tom Izzo, having him as your head coach, that's just huge. a great freshman in Jason Richardson. I will praise that guy so much. He is so good. He's so underrated. And then they have guys like Jaden Akins, who's been there before and can get it done for them. They also have gritty big men who can get them rebounds. So those would be my two favorites right now. Many people have been saying Maryland as a sleeper.
Yeah.
I could see that. They're a decent team, but they got no depth. What do you think?
Yeah, that's totally true. Another team that's was up there now is flown under the radar because they've been banged up. They just got rolled by Duke, Illinois, right?
Yeah.
They're a young team, Europeans. They still have that appeal that they can catch fire in March, but you're right. There's just something about this Big Ten conference. They don't have any teams that really check all the boxes to make the Final Four.
Yeah, and one team I wouldn't be surprised if they made like a shocking Sweet 16 run like Michigan did a couple years ago when everyone didn't think they should have even made the tournament is Indiana. I don't think they're as bad of a team as most people think. I think they have some good guard play. They have Ballo, of course. They have Mackenzie Mbako, and Malik Renew. They have the talent. They were like preseason top 15. And they've been catching a little bit of a win streak recently, too. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were to actually maybe make like a second weekend appearance.
Yeah, totally. And Mike Woodson, did you see them all running to Mike Woodson after the game?
Yeah.
This guy was getting criticized mid-season, and he's not coaching next year. So what's better to end out the season with a bang? Maybe a Big Ten conference tournament win?
Yeah, he's going all in, that's for sure.
So I guess we'll just go to the Big East, right?
Mm-hmm. All right, so Big East, St. John's obviously just like this wrecking crew through the Big East this year, beating everybody. But the thing is, I'm a St. John's fan. Like, Clemson and St. John's are my two favorite teams. But, like, I've been watching a lot of their basketball. They're a good team for sure. Great coach, great defense. They've started to make more shots now. But it's not like they're blowing teams out. Pretty much every win they have is a close game. But it's not really that much of a bad thing. I really do think this team has a DNA for March. Like, once they get into some of these close games, maybe if they do make it to the second weekend, I think they're going to be just such a tough out because they've been there before in all of these close games. Unlike maybe a team like Duke, if they see them like a 1-3 Elite Eight matchup, I could easily see St. John's winning that game. I just think they could get it done against top teams. They haven't lost by more than 3 all year. They just haven't. Like, they're going to be in every single game, and they pretty much win every close game.
Yeah, and Pitino knows how to get it done.
Yeah.
But the Big East, they have these teams that are kind of circulating around the bubble, right? Mm-hmm. Xavier, Villanova, these teams that aren't in the tournament right now, they can catch fire in the Big East tournament. But realistically, I think they need to beat a team like Creighton. Marquette is really flying under the radar right now.
I haven't heard people talk about Marquette in like a month. They haven't looked that good, but like they're still a decent team. You're right. They've been flying under the radar like crazy.
They don't really have too much depth either. I mean, they have guys who have experience. Yeah. Cam Jones, people were talking about this guy nonstop. He's still good, but we're not sure if he's the level of Cam Jones that we've seen.
Yeah, and I mean, Marquette, I would say it's really close between them and Creighton. Even St. John's, it's really close between them 3, honestly. St. John's is probably a little bit above them, and then I'd put Marquette and Creighton then a bit above UConn. And I'd honestly put UConn at the same tier with Xavier, and then Villanova slightly below, and then it kind of drops off a little bit. But yeah, so Xavier and Villanova, they're going to be in this tournament looking for big wins. They're going to have opportunities. They're going to play teams like Creighton and Marquette, and one win like that could definitely get you in with the weak bubble this year.
Yeah, and people talked about this UConn team at the beginning of the year. Could you go for a 3-peat? Hurley came back to coach to not go to the Lakers. But this team, they just haven't shown really enough, I guess, for that 3-peat yet. I just don't think they have the talent. They don't have a guy like Klingon. They don't have the good guard play what they had last year with Newton and Spencer. Solo Ball is good, but he's not that good.
Yeah, and like, if I was a 1 seed, I still wouldn't want to see them in like an 8-9 matchup because, it's Dan Hurley. They're the back-to-back national champions. Why would you, right? But at the same time, they're so much worse than they are the past 2 years. They just don't have that talent. Liam McNeely, I really like him. I think he's a good player. Solo Ball, he's obviously a good player. But outside of that, do you really got anyone? Caravan has been so underwhelming this season. He's been missing every shot. If he gets hot and starts making shots, I could maybe see them making a second weekend appearance. But I think there's way more upside between St. John's, Creighton, and Marquette.
Yeah, Caravan, the last few years, he's been almost a role player on these teams. I mean, he was still probably averaging double-digit points per game at starting. And now he finally gets his role to start and really be the captain of this team as with the veteran experience. And he just hasn't filled that role.
No, not really. And let's go to the ACC real quick. This is just pretty easy. Like, you got the top three, Clemson, Louisville, Duke. Three teams who I think could maybe make Final Four runs. They're all top 15 teams in the country. They're all good. But then it's a huge drop-off until you find your bubble teams, and these teams are probably out of the tournament right now. We see Wake Forest do this every year where they're in a good spot, and they lose to three terrible teams pretty much in a row. And they still have a couple games left against terrible teams that I think they could lose to as well. SMU, they're beating all the bad teams, but don't beat any of the good teams. They have good metrics, so you don't really know with them. I have no clue what the committee thinks of them right now. And it's pretty much the same thing with North Carolina. Both of those teams just can't seem to win the good game, beat the good teams. And I have a question for you. Like, what do you think the committee's going to like more? A team like Wake Forest, who actually has won some decent games, like a road win at SMU, and they beat North Carolina, but also lost for like quad three games, or are they going to like a team like SMU and North Carolina who haven't lost any of those bad games, but they can't get any good wins?
I feel like just you always talk about how weak the bubble is this year, and the committee, yeah, they're going to look at the resume from the whole season, but they look at these metrics all the time. They've been giving out rankings every Sunday for the past 2 Sundays. So the most important thing is now, and the great thing for these 3 teams is that they control their path to the tournament, as all of these teams do. You still have ACC tournament games, and at the end of the day, it's on you if you really want to win those games, because there are opportunities in the ACC tournament. You can still get quad 1 opportunities at their neutral site games, and that's what these teams need to do. They just have to win.
Yeah, and that's what John Calipari was saying in his press conference the other day. He was like, we're so close to getting these wins, and I know we can do it, and we finally got our big win. And I'm just telling the guys, like, don't get excited. We have to keep this momentum rolling through. We can't get one win and then let the fate in our committee's hand. We still lost all these games. And then he was telling the press conference people, was like, everyone still controls their fate. That's why college basketball is such a great sport. You always have the opportunities. Just can you convert? And Wake Forest is just not doing it for the past 2 years. They've had the opportunities. They haven't been that good, but they still have opportunities, but they're just letting them falter every time.
Yeah, and this team, they have the players, I guess you could say. But another thing that I don't think has been helping them is this weak non-conference schedule.
Yeah.
It doesn't set them up for success. They were probably feeling good heading into ACC play. They started off pretty well in ACC play. But as the weeks have gone on, this team has just gotten tired. They've lost bad, close games to teams that are way out of the tournament. And what the committee wants to see is you lose to good teams, not bad ones.
Yeah, I agree. And just they just don't even like. Sure, they have some talent, but when I watch them play, they don't even really look good. They, unlike a team like Clemson, they don't have an offensive game plan. Their game plan is just one-on-one ball, and it's not like Hunter Styles is really the only guy on their team who can get them a bucket, and then they just double team, and there's no one else who can do anything. Like Tyler Johnson, what are you doing trying to go one-on-one versus their best defender? Cam Hildreth, step back threes. I don't even know who you think you are. And then Trayvon Spillers can't make a layup to save his life. And Afton Reed is always in foul trouble. They're just not a good team.
Yeah, and you think Steve Forbes is on the hot seat right now?
Yeah, for some reason I feel like a lot of people are high on this guy. I don't really see why. Sure, he had some decent players in transfer portal. They're always hyped up. They never make the tournament. I think he is on the hot seat.
Yeah, they haven't made the tournament in, 3-4 years?
Maybe like 7.
I mean, for a power ACC program,
yeah,
you got to be making a tournament, especially because you've come so close.
Yeah.
When is it time for them to actually try to get some quad 1 wins and knock, like Oklahoma? If you look at Oklahoma's conference resume,
yeah,
and then you look at their non-conference resume, if you're just looking at their conference resume, you'd be like, how is this team even in contention for the tournament? It's because their non-conference play, where they got quad 1 wins, set them up for success for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and let's just quickly talk about the SEC and Big 12. So the SEC, it's just fun because like you have like 8 teams at the top who are all pretty much locked for the tournament and are all really good. We can talk about those teams all day. They all kind of like beat each other up except for Auburn, who's been really good this year. But then you got the teams like Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, and I think those are teams Georgia, and these guys are all in the bubble. And it's going to be fun to see. Even like these first round or second round SEC tournament games, we're gonna have like huge matchups, like in the first round, like a 12 or 13 seed, like Oklahoma, Texas. These could be make or break games for March Madness. And then we go to the Big 12, and it's pretty much the exact opposite. You have 5 top teams, but this conference just really fell off. A lot of their teams like aren't that good this year. And they don't even really have a single bubble team.
Yeah, ESPN ranked the Big 12 as the top conference heading into the year. They're certainly not the top conference now. SEC, right?
Yeah.
13 out of the 16 teams are currently in the field, and there's a few on the outside that can still fight their way in. These tournament games are going to be huge because with all these SEC teams, the committee's not in the bracketing principles. They can't have these teams match up in the first round. They can't. Second round, they shouldn't, which means they're going to have to adjust a few seed lines, not based on what the seeds should be, but what the seeds have to be.
Yeah.
So for an SEC team to pick up some wins heading late or some conference tournament that can boost them up over the other SEC 10 seeds, I mean, they could even get bumped up a seed because of the bracketing principles.
Another interesting thing, since we're talking about the Big 12, BYU just can't be an 8 or 9 seed, which I saw in a video. I still don't really understand why. I know they can't play on Sundays, but I don't really understand what that has to do with it. I think it might have to do something with the 1 seed has a priority, what day they play or something. We'll get into that closer to March. But, the other thing I was going to say is just like I saw this thing, the SEC against the Big 12, 16-2. That is absurd. Against the ACC, I think it was like 28-5, which made it even be crazier. But the SEC dominating the ACC, dominating the Big 12. They're beating the Big 10 9-5, which is a pretty good amount. But the funny thing is, I'm pretty sure they're tied with the Big East, like 6-6 or 7-7 right now, which is pretty interesting to me. It's kind of surprising. Maybe it's because some of these bottom tier SEC teams are playing teams like St. John's and Creighton. That's definitely possible, but it's just pretty interesting.
And another thing about the Big 12 is Utah actually fired their coach earlier this week, and I'm not sure why, because they're actually still in at-large contention.
Yeah, I know. They've actually been doing
to win at-large. It's not that they were eliminated from the at-large. Another thing you're talking about, these conferences win-loss record, and why is the committee even thinking about picking, another conference team like the ACC or Big 12? Why would they think about one of those bubble teams that may have 2 more conference wins than an SEC team?
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense. And another thing that doesn't make any sense to me at all is how does an Arizona team with 5 more losses than like a Clemson team, for an example, is a higher seed? What? And everyone says Arizona has a good non-conference. Yeah, they have a good schedule. Did they win any of the games? No. And it's not like Clemson doesn't have good wins. They're 5-2 in quad 1, considering it wins against 3 blue bloods. It doesn't make any sense to me really at all. I'm starting to see more respect for Clemson. I've seen some guys have them as 4 and 3 seeds. I think that they deserve to be a 4 seed right now. And if they keep winning the rest of the regular season, I think they should maybe get all the way up to the 3, considering all the SEC teams can't all be on the same seed line as well.
But the great thing for Arizona is, we talk about this all the time. You look at the top 4 seeds, all around the top 16 teams. Anybody on the West Coast? Yeah. Anybody want to play in Seattle? Nope. No, that's a short trip for Arizona compared to every other team that's going to play in Seattle. You look at some bracketologists right now. Arizona's playing teams like McNeese. They're a really good 12, 13 seed. Do they want to travel all the way to Seattle? Definitely not. Team like Yale, that's the whole other side of the country. They do not want to travel there.
Yeah, and the thing is, the West, no team from the West, I think, has won since 1988. Gonzaga's been good a couple of years. Arizona, just none of those teams can win out there. But the thing, I think it's good. I think you want to be in the West region if you're like a 6 or 7 seed looking to make a run. It's so much weaker. If you play second round matchup, you're going to end up even playing against Arizona instead of a Duke or a Tennessee or a Florida. It's just, I would way rather have that playing against a team like St. Mary's in the Sweet 16. I'm taking that any day.
We talk about St. Mary's. Actually, we could talk about some mid-majors, but an interesting thing about St. Mary's is their offensive rebounding numbers are off the charts, and they don't get offensive rebounds. The definition of a rebound, you grab a ball with 2 hands, you pull it down. That's like a rebound, right? Well, St. Mary's, Mitchell Saxon, He gets his body in there. He can give shoves to Graham Ike. We've seen it. And he tips it out.
Yeah.
They don't grab the ball with two hands. You tip it out to your shooters because they'll have four guys on the perimeter. There's no reason for them to have guys running in. You go for the tip out. If the tip out doesn't work, there's a chance you get fouled. It's just a higher percentage play. It's very smart.
And you're also back on defense.
Exactly. They're grabbing it with two hands. Texas A&M is very prone to fast breaks.
Yep.
So speaking of mid-majors, like a team like Yale right now, there are 12 that top mid-major. George Mason, these are top mid-majors. Realistically, how many double-digit mid-major? Well, how many mid-majors do you think, including St. Mary's and Gonzaga, are going to make the Sweet 16 or Elite Eight?
Including St. Mary's and Gonzaga, and then I guess that includes Memphis and like VCU as well. Mid-majors, I'd say like one or two. I think that's a pretty decent amount. Like I would probably say one, maybe zero. But if you're including some of these teams that are going to be like 4 to 9 seeds, I think one of them could easily make a run. And then you always have one of these like 12 to 16 seeds that finds their way into the Sweet 16. And I think there's a good chance we have it again this year. So I'd probably take like 2.
Yeah, you talk about these mid-majors. There is always that one team over the last few years that's a double-digit seed that makes a run to Sweet 16, Elite 8. And that's what makes the madness so much fun. But then again, you talk about these mid-majors, and this is another question I just thought of, but let's say a team like Yale, they're going to be a 12 seed in the Ivy League. And then let's say a team, maybe Dartmouth, wins the Ivy League. How many, do you really decentivize them? Because even if they beat Yale, maybe their resume doesn't look as great. Do you desensitize the whole conference and maybe move them down to like a 14 seed, 15 seed, or do they deserve to be up as a 12?
See, I would have thought move them down to a 14, 15 seed, but it was pretty interesting. Last year, Duquesne was like the 7 seed in the A10, and they won the conference, and they got an 11 seed when many people think they were deserving of a 14 seed. They ended up winning the conference, their first game of the tournament, so it didn't really matter. But I think that answers your question right there. I don't know. I think they would get like a 13 is my guess if they won the Ivy League.
Yeah, another thing I saw when you're talking about the first 4, these 16 seeds, people always say, oh, that's annoying for these 16 seeds. They get automatic bids and they have to play 2 games. Actually helps the program out.
Yeah.
Because they're getting paid for those games. But no chance of 15 or 16 wins this year, right?
I wouldn't say no chance. We've seen it so much recently. It's actually crazy. Even last year we had a 14 seed win. Well, I did not see that coming at all. And then how did Yale beat Auburn? That doesn't make any sense to me either. I did not see that coming. And then the past couple of years we had 15 teams making it to like the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8. So how could I say the answer is going to be no for sure? If I had to bet on it for my life, I'd probably say the odds are no. But even though it seems like it's like impossible because they're all like 20-point underdogs, 30-point underdogs, for some reason it always ends up happening. So I'm not going to say it, no.
All right. To close out the show, I have an interesting question that we'll both do. If you were to right now, you have to add up the seeds of the final 4 teams. You add up the seeds and you get one number.
Yeah. Well,
what's your number?
Probably. I'd probably say like 15. I'd say 15 because I think you're gonna get like a 6-7, like make it to the Final Four. I could see a team like maybe even like a Louisville this year. That's what popped in my mind. I think they can make it as like a 6 or a 7 seed, right? You're gonna have at least one seed in there. It's very rare that you don't. I could see 2 1 seeds. So maybe like a 7 seed, 2 1 seeds, and then I'd throw like a 4 or 5 seed in there that upsets 1 seed, has momentum. So I put it anywhere in the range of like 11 to 16. My final answer, I'd say 14. 14.
I'm going to say more like 9, 10. Because I feel like this is the year last year there were actually a lot of 1 seeds that made.
It was UConn,
Purdue,
and then an 11 seed, so it ended up being like 14.
Yeah, but I feel like this year, I'm going to pick 10.
10?
I think you could get 2 1 seeds. If you don't, 10 gives me cushion for a 1 seed, a 2 seed, a 3 seed, and a 4 seed.
Yeah.
And then if you do get 2 4 seeds, you get 2 1 seeds. You can combat it.
See, I would think I would usually say like anywhere from 7 to 10 because that just seems like it would make sense. But if you looked at the past couple of years, it's probably maybe even the average might be more than 15. We've had like for some reason so many 11 seeds in the Final Four. That one year where there was like a 9, a 5, a 4, and like a 7 seed or something. That one UConn won the first time. So I wouldn't be surprised. But you're right. This year, you're not going to get like a 9 to 11 seed because the bubble's so weak. But at the same time, since the bubble's weak, there's other teams that have to be good. Anywhere I'd say up to a 7 seed, like these 7 seeds, they're good this year. I'm telling you right now, there's going to be a 6 or 7 seed that makes it to the Final Four because they are like Louisville, Maryland, even like a Gonzaga, like an 8 seed. These teams have run potential, and I can easily see it go. I can easily see it happening.
All right, so we'll check back in on these in a few weeks. We'll be back with the podcast next week, most likely. So for Brody Jacobson and Lucas DeVries, we're signing out.